Very good evening to all of you who have joined for today's session. Good evening, Dr. Harmeet. Good evening, Raki, and everyone. And on behalf of College of Nursing, AIMS Rishikesh, we welcome you all for today's session. And this is today's session is going to be an important topic that is on item analysis. And I hope many of you during your student period or your teaching practice might have faced issues regarding how to handle this topic. So, and we are going to hear from a expert who has done a lot of work on this. And may I now hand over the session to Dr. Raki Mishra, the chairperson for today's presentation.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening to everyone. Welcome you all once again on the 4th day of online training program on nursing education, evaluation and measurements. We all agree that in the teaching learning process, evaluation plays an important role and the importance of measurement cannot be neglected. So today's topic is item analysis that will enlighten on how an quality test item should be prepared so that it will increase assessment or evaluation efficiency. Before beginning, I would like to introduce Madam Dr. Harmeet Kaur, Principal, Chitkara School of Health Sciences, Chitkara University, Punjab. Ma'am has done BSc Nursing from PGI, Chandigarh, MSc from New Delhi AIMS, and PhD Nursing from National Consortium for PhD Nursing, Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences, Bangalore. Ma'am is also postdoctoral fellowship from Johns Hopkins University, Baltimore, MD, USA. Ma'am has also got funding of $5,280 for this postdoctoral fellowship project. Madam developed e-content for Swayam Prabha DTH channel under the initiative of IIT Madras and Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India. Ma'am completed certification in nurse leadership under Duke Corporate Education on full scholarship. She is a member of Academic Council, Examination Committee, IQAC Committee of Chitkara University, Punjab. Ma'am is also chairperson of various program committees, TNI Punjab State Branch. She received appreciation certificate in the recognition of individual contribution as a nurse leader by Sigma Theta Tau Honor International Society of Nursing in the year 2017. She is recognized as guide under National Consortium for PhD Nursing by Indian Nursing Council, Bangalore. Ma'am is also Indian Nursing Council Inspector for Nurse Practitioner Residency Program in Critical Care Nursing. Ma'am is a member of Board of Studies, Thesis Evaluator for PhD and Diploma in Science Program of various universities. Ma'am has many research publications. She has written book chapters. Ma'am is also having one patent registered, presented a number of papers in international and national conferences, served as resource person and expert for number of workshops and seminars. She is also guiding PhD scholars and national consortium and Chitkara in Chitkara University, Punjab. So now I request ma'am to please enlighten the participants with this topic item analysis. Over to you, ma'am. Ma'am, shall I share the screen or you will share on your behalf, on your own?
Yeah, I'll share the screen.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So, participants, if you are having any query, you can put up in the chat box. It will be answered after the session is over. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Raki. Thank you, Dr. Belsi and Dr. Smriti for providing me this opportunity to present this important topic. I was just going through the topics which have already been covered. I think a lot of the things have been covered and it will help me today for this particular topic also, because I believe that last day The topic taken was on MCQs, that how to develop the MCQs, how to go for the different distractors, which we responses. So these all are going to help me out for this my session. So let me start sharing the screen. Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So the topic which have been given to me is item analysis. So majorly item analysis is used for maximizing the test quality. We can improve the quality of our questionnaire, multiple choice questionnaire through the item analysis. What are the objectives of this session? So today, once you will be completing this session, you will be able to know that what is the importance of item analysis. I believe most of you know, but still I'll just talk about the importance of item analysis. And also I'll be describing the different components of item analysis. And once you get to know that these are the components, then you will be able to calculate the different components of important components of item analysis. And then based upon the calculations, the computation which you do for the item analysis, you will be able to take the final decision for the retention or rejection of the items in any test. So items when I'm saying, it means I'm talking about the different questions which you design in an MCQ questionnaire, right? So before moving forward, I just want to talk about a quote by Dylan William, who is an educator from UK. He said that if our students learned what we taught, we would never need to assess. So if we know that whatever we are teaching, our students are learning, then is there any need for assessing? No, then there will not be any need. But we know that all of them do not learn what we teach. So it is only through assessment that we can discover whether the instructional activities in which we engage our students resulted in the intended learning. Assessment really is the bridge between teaching and learning. So assessment is very important for understanding that whether our students are able to learn what we are teaching, what we intend to teach, whether they are learning the same thing or not. So for this, assessment is very, very important. And when we are saying assessment, it should be the quality assessment. So that is why whichever methods we are using for the assessment, we should aim for the quality assessment only. So all of you know about the Bloom's taxonomy. So when we are teaching, we are thinking from the point of view of the learners. So always, you know that whenever we are deciding about our courses or topics, we always decide about our objectives. And through the learning objectives should be based upon the Bloom's taxonomy, and we should be knowing that different concepts, whether we will be going for the level 1 type of learning, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. And we should always aim for the higher level of learning. You know that the higher level of learning are the upper ones, that are level 5 and 6, evaluating and creating. So our teaching methods should be planned in a way that we should be able to, that our learners should be able to learn at the higher level. And at the same time, our assessment should be in a way that we should be able to assess the higher levels of learning, right? So I think last day you all have studied about the multiple choice questions. So what do you think, whether multiple choice questions are able to assess the higher levels of learning also? Anybody would like to answer? You can also write in the chat box, or you can speak. Do you think that multiple choice questions are able to assess the higher levels of learning? Bloom's taxonomy? Yes. So Sudhendra has said that yes, it is able to. Can you elaborate a little bit more how we can assess the higher levels of learning? Through MCQs. Okay, some of you are saying no. No, okay. And somebody said yes also. Sudhendra, can you a little bit elaborate more why you said yes? Nobody is right or wrong. Okay, it has some limitations. Priyanka is writing, yeah. Anyone else want to answer? Okay, in the last class also, ma'am might have talked about that which levels we can assess through the MCQs. Okay, no problem. So, you know, whenever we are writing the questions, the STEM, and then we are deciding about the responses in MCQ, we can go for the higher level learning also. It depends upon that what type of questions you are giving to the student. For example, we can go for the different case scenarios, and based upon that case scenario, you can go for different MCQs, isn't it? So that case scenario can be from the real life experiences also in the hospital, what happens every day. Maybe some complex case where complication has happened, and then you want the student to decide that what action the student will be taking. So in that way, if you are asking the question based upon some case scenario where some complex issues are there, then you can definitely assess the higher levels of learning. So Mr. Sudhendra, he was right that we can assess. It depends upon how you are writing your question and your responses, right? So we can definitely go for the higher levels of the learning. Okay. Now coming to the assessment methods again. So multiple choice questions are mostly used in every discipline, you know. Maybe in the class tests also we can go for the multiple choice question, and particularly when we talk about entrance tests, higher level entrance tests, always you have seen that multiple choice questions are there. And in the classroom also we can use the MCQs. And nowadays, even the summative assessment also includes some multiple choice questions, some short answer questions, some long answer questions. So multiple choice questions are important part of the assessments. But then it is very important that whether the questions which we are writing for the assessment are these quality items or not. That is very, very important. And we should be aiming to answer various questions whenever we are devising a questionnaire. Okay. So we, as a teacher, we should be knowing that which topic. Are there some complex topics which the students are not able to understand? Our assessments can help us in knowing about all these things. And when we go for the item analysis, we can get to know about these also, that these are the topics with which the students are struggling with. They are not able to answer it with confidence. Is a particular question as difficult, complex, or rigorous as you intend it to be? When you are devising your assessment methods, you should be able to know that whether this particular question is very difficult or complex. And is it that difficult or complex which I intend to? Because sometimes the content which we are covering for our question, for our assessment, might be a complex content. And then your questions also should be framed in that way, right? And do the students really know the answer or just applying the test taking strategy to eliminate wrong answers? So that also is possible whenever we are giving a questionnaire, particularly MCQ. So whether the students really know the questions or they are just guessing it, or they are just applying some test taking strategies to eliminate the wrong answers. Just some strategies that sometimes, you know, some students, they just know that these are types of MCQs come in the entrance test. So they just know that these answers will be there because they cram the multiple choice questions. okay, from different questions. So then they may apply the test taking strategies to eliminate the wrong answers. Then another question can be which items should be eliminated or revised before the subsequent test administration. You should be knowing that whether all the items which I have devised or I have written, whether these items are good or I need to revise it. Sometimes we take the first test. In that test, we may get to know that these items were not the right items. And in the subsequent next, if same questionnaire I'm using in the next time also, then I should be able to revise the questions, revise the items which I got to know through item analysis that these were not right. Do the items do an excellent job of separating the students who know the content from those who may merely guess the correct answer? So this is a very important thing, that our assessment method should be such that I should be able to separate out the students who know well and who do not know. Okay, that should be very, very important. The student should not be able to merely guess the correct answer. Our items, our distractors, our responses should be made in a way that we should be able to do an excellent job of separating the students who know the content, who do not know. So for answering these questions, we can go for item analysis. Okay. So item analysis, when we are saying, it means we are doing the analysis of all the questions, different questions, which are the part of our assessment, right? So what is item analysis? Item analysis is a statistical technique. So here statistics is applied. This is a statistical technique which is used in the educational research. We call it as educational research because mostly we apply these statistical tests when we are doing some research in the education. But in our day-to-day life also, we can use this item analysis whenever we are making an MCQ questionnaire, right? So in educational research, to evaluate the quality of individual test items or questions in a test. So here we do not assess overall quality, but we assess for each and every item of our questionnaire. It involves analyzing the responses of the students of each questions. So whether which student has answered the question correctly or wrongly, each and everything is taken into consideration when we are doing the item analysis. And we determine, what do we determine? We determine the difficulty level of each question. We determine the discrimination power, whether that particular question is able to separate out the students who know the content and students who do not know the content, and effectiveness of each item in measuring the intended learning outcomes. So whatever our learning outcomes were there, whether my question, each question in my questionnaire is effective in measuring whatever learning outcomes I had thought of, I had expected. So this is item analysis. So it is a statistical technique through which we analyze each and every questions to know how difficult it is, how easy it is, how much discrimination power it has, and how much effective it is, right? So that is the item analysis. If you have any question, please write down in the chat box, or you can ask in between also. So what are the purposes of item analysis? I think by now, all of you might have understood that what is the purpose of item analysis. So first one is identify which test items are functioning well and which are not. Okay. Okay, before going forward, I just want to ask you one question, whether we do the item analysis before administering the questionnaire or after. Anyone? Test administration se pehle we do the item analysis or after?
Ma'am, obviously after.
Yes, yes. So this should be very clear to all of you that item analysis we can do only after, once we score the test. Okay. So once we have given the MCQs, we have administered the MCQ questionnaire, then after that, we can identify that which test items are functioning well and which are not. So which items were really well framed and which were not, whether they were effective items or not, we get to know through item analysis. then we can make the informed decisions whether to retain, revise, or discard certain questions. Through our calculations, we get to know that which question is a good question and we can retain, or any question need to be revised, or any question need to be deleted, need to be discarded. So we can make the informed decision because we are taking this decision based upon our analysis. That is why we can make the informed decision. So this is particularly important for educators because it allows them to improve the quality and validity of their assessment. Okay. So through this, they are able to improve the quality and validity of their assessment. And they also will be able to better understand the strengths and weaknesses of their students. Okay. So which question was a difficult question, whether the students were able to answer that question or not. So through that, you will get to know that these, what are the strengths and weaknesses of your students, whether there are certain areas in which your students, most of them are not able to answer. So it means this is the weakness. Whether certain areas are such areas where they have answered all the questions very nicely, correctly they have answered. So you will be able to understand the strengths and weaknesses of your students. Then it is also valuable for increasing the instructor's skill in test construction. Okay, so once you do the item analysis, you get to know that what was the problem with my question, whether there was problem with the responses, whether the question framing was not right, whether the question level was very difficult or very easy. So when you will decide about retention, or you will be deciding about revising or discarding some questions, your skills in test construction improve. Okay, and you identify the specific area of the course content which need greater emphasis or clarity. So you get to know that these areas, this content maybe was not taught in a better way, was not taught in a proper way. So do I need to put more emphasis so that students should be more clear about this particular area? So you can take certain decisions about your content delivery also. Okay. You also get to know whether some areas have to be dealt upon more or have to be simplified more so that your students should have more clarity about those areas. Okay. So these are the different purposes of the item analysis. Now, moving forward, what are the major concepts of item analysis? There are important 3 components of item analysis. The number 1 is difficulty index. Okay. Number 2 is discriminatory index, or you can say discrimination power. Number 3 is test score reliability. Okay. We will be talking in depth about all these major concepts of item analysis. So first of all is difficulty index. What is difficulty index? It is the index which measures that how easy or difficult a question is. So how do we get to know that this question is easy or difficult? Based upon the proportion of students who answered it correctly. Okay. So how many students answered, proportion of students answered it correctly can give us the information about the difficulty index of our question. One question I'm talking about, of one item. Okay. So how it is calculated? It is calculated as number of students who answered the question correctly. Okay, divided by total number of students who took the test. So how many students? If 50 students have taken the test, and out of that 10 students have answered it correctly, then difficulty index will be 10 by 50. Okay, so that will be your difficulty index. We will be doing it afterwards. So now I'm just giving you some I want to give you an idea that what is difficulty index. Okay. Now coming to discrimination index or discrimination power. Okay. Now discrimination index is a statistical measure used to evaluate the effectiveness of test item or question in distinguishing between high and low performing students. So our questions should be formed in a way that each question should be able to distinguish between high and low performing students. The students who know the content and the students who do not know the content, our questions should be able to differentiate, should be able to distinguish between them. That is known as the discrimination index. The discriminatory index or discrimination index is calculated as the difference between proportion of top performing students. So if 50 students have given the answer or have been administered the questionnaire, then out of them, there will be some top performing students and there will be some bottom performing students. So, okay. So the difference between the proportion of top performing students who answered the item correctly and the proportion of bottom performing students who answered the item correctly. So that difference will give us the discriminatory index. Also, we get to know about the distractor information. When we will calculate the difficulty index and discrimination index, we get to know about distractor information also. Distractors are what? These are the wrong responses which we have given in our responses. Okay. If MCQ is one item is the question, and under that you have given 4 responses. Out of 4, only 1 is the right answer. But the wrong answers are your distractors. So through these, we get to know about the distractor information also. So why do we need to know about the distractors? Because distractor information helps in determining the effectiveness of distractors in the question. So distractors should be the good distractors. Students should not be able to guess the right answers very obviously. No, it should act as a distractor only, so that they have to think, they have to use their brain to answer the question. Okay. Then identify any ineffective or misleading distractors in your multiple choice question. Now, ineffective distractors can be the distractors which are very easy to eliminate. So just by seeing, just by reading, you can say that these are not the answers. Then that becomes an ineffective distractor. And sometimes some distractors might be misleading. Misleading distractors might be the distractors in which student may get misled that this might be the right answer. So the students who know the content also, sometimes they may get misled by the distractor. It should not be a misleading distractor also, and it should not be an ineffective distractor. Make adjustments to improve the validity and reliability of your assessment. So distractor information helps us to improve the validity and reliability of our assessment if we get to know that whether our distractors are good or ineffective. Now, what is item correlation? Item correlation is a statistical measure used to assess the relationship between an individual test item and the overall test score. If you have 50 questions, then out of 50, the scores of a student and its relationship with the individual test item, okay, that correlation is known as the item correlation. So it is a type of a correlation coefficient only. In research, we use the correlation coefficient, so we can calculate in the same way. And it indicates the strength and direction of relationship between the individual test item and the total test score. So mostly what should happen, if I have the good information about the content of some area, then my question, each question's answer should also correlate with my total score. Okay. If it is happening that there is no correlation, then it means there are some questions which are out of our content area. Okay. It means I need to change those items or I need to eliminate those items. So that is that item correlation is very important. So it should be item total correlation. So item total correlation, item is difference, individual item scoring of all the students with the total scores, okay, of all the students. It should be correlating. So that is also a measure of the item analysis. Okay. Till now, if you have any question, now we will be moving forward to the different steps which we take when we have to compute or calculate the different components of the item analysis. So till now, if you have any question, you can ask. Okay, if you don't have any questions, so let's move forward. So now coming to the different steps which we have to take. Number one step is score the test. Okay, you have administered the test, you have got the answers from each person, each student. Now you have to score the test. So scoring can be done through OMR sheets also. Nowadays we use the OMR sheet, particularly for entrance tests. You know, we use the OMR sheets, and for the last scale test, we get the automatic answers. Okay, and you get for each student, for first question what was the scoring, for second question what was the scoring. So that scoring you have to do. And if for the classroom test, you can do the manual scoring. Okay, so first step is that you need to score the test. Okay, for 50 students, you have to have a list that this is the total score, and for each and every question, the score also should be that information also you should have. Okay, now once you have scored, then the next step is you have to arrange the test papers from highest to lowest scores. So सबसे पहले highest scores, then coming down to the lowest scores. So you have to arrange the test papers after scoring in that way, right? Now, next step, that is the third step, is you separate the top 27 from the bottom lower 27. So we have to take upper 27 and bottom 27% of the students. Okay, upper group and lower group. Why 27% is used? Because 27% of upper. Somebody muted me. Okay, it's okay. So 27% of the upper group and 27% of the lower group is used because it has shown that this value maximizes the difference in normal distribution while providing enough cases for analysis. Okay, so this is enough for calculating, doing the statistical analysis in the item analysis. And this has been given by the Versma and Gers in 1990. And now again, their one book on education and assessment has come out that was in 2019. Okay, so they gave this information that 27% of upper group and 27% of lower group, if we are using for item analysis, that is enough for calculating our values. Okay, so you can take that. So once you have separated bottom 27% from the top 27%, then next step. Okay, before moving forward, so this is the type of information which you may get. For example, if I am having 50 students, okay, no, sorry, yes, 50 students. So 50 students, how do I calculate the upper 27%? So first of all, I have arranged it from highest to lowest. If you can see on the, from first onwards, these are the highest scores, and when you are moving forward to the last bottom students, it is having the lowest scores. So it has been arranged from highest to lowest. Now how you have to calculate number of the students? Upper 27 will be 14 students, okay, and lower 27 will be again 14 students. Okay, so you can calculate the percentage. Okay, so 27 by 100 into 50, you will get the 14 students for the upper group and 14 students for the lower group. Now these are the 14 students who are in the upper group, and these are the 14 students who are in the lower group. Okay, after this, next step is you have to prepare a tally sheet. Now how to prepare a tally sheet? On one side, all the item numbers you have to write. For example, in my questionnaire, I had 40 or 50 questions. So one side you will write the item numbers, and for the upper 27%, out of 14, how many answered the first item correctly? That tally sheet you have to prepare. Okay. So for example, here for the first item, all the 14 answered correctly in the upper 27 group. Okay. So now I have written 14. And from the lower group also, out of 14, all have answered the first item correctly. So that is why it is written 14. But for the second item, 13 out of 14, they have answered it correctly. And for the lower group, 11 out of 14 have answered correctly. So like this, you have to prepare a tally sheet. Okay. Have you understood? I hope you are able to understand that how to prepare the tally sheet. So tally sheet should be item wise. You have to prepare for your both the groups, upper 27 where n is equal to 14, because here are 14 students are there, and for lower group also you had 14 students. So you just write down that for first question how many have answered correctly in both the groups, and for the second question how many have answered correctly, and then this type of tally sheet you will be able to prepare, right? So this was the step 4. Yes, we have to I have a question that, ma'am, we have to prepare for each item. Yes, for each item. If you have 50 items or 50 questions, then for 50 items you have to prepare it. Okay. Items should be all, but students' information should be for upper 27% and lower 27%, right? So like this, you will be preparing a tally sheet. Once you have prepared a tally sheet, then you have to move forward. Now the next step is you have to convert the frequencies to proportion. Now frequency is number of students who have answered the question correctly. Just a minute, I have one question. If 2 or many students have same score, then what to do? Okay, I'll go back. Just a minute. Okay, please don't confuse here. Here I'm talking about number of students only. So here there are more than 2 students who have answered it correctly. Here out of 14, all the 14 have answered correctly. So you have to know that for first question, how many students answered it correctly. So for the first question, out of 14 upper one were these students, these 14 students, okay? And lower one were these 14 students. So out of these 14 students, how many have answered the first question correctly, that you will write in your tally sheet for the upper group. And out of 14 lower bottom students, how many have answered it correctly, that you will write. I hope I am able to answer your question, Pritha Chaudhary. Have you understood that from out of 14 students, how many have answered the item correctly? Now we are talking about different items, each and every item.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am, one thing is like we are arranging it in the descending order. So if like 2 or like, can you please have the last slide, please, ma'am?
Yes. Yeah.
Ma'am, like in this, if we are having like 3-4 people having the same scores, then how we will arrange that? Like here, ma'am, is 43,
Okay,
43,
doesn't matter.
Okay.
ऊपर कर लो, नीचे कर लो, roll number wise करना चाह रहे हो, that is up to you.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, this is not, we are not preparing a merit sheet. Okay, we are just doing it for our item analysis, right? Okay. Now the next step is convert the frequencies to proportions. Okay. Now we need the proportion of students, because for calculation we will be needing the proportion. So that is why we need to convert the frequencies to the proportion. So for the proportion, how you will convert the frequencies to proportion? That will be proportion is equal to number of correct answers divided by total number of students. Okay. If there are 14 students, like in upper group there were 14 students, in the lower group there were 14 students. So there were 6. Please mute yourself. Miss Smita, please mute. Okay. So if 14 persons have answered it correctly, and 14 students are there, then 14 divided by 14 is equal to 1. Okay. So like this, you will be calculating the proportion. Okay. So this is the way, once you have prepared a tally sheet, you were having the item numbers, you were having the frequency. Then in front of that, we can calculate the proportion. Okay. So 14 students have answered, 14 students out of 14 have answered it correctly. So your proportion will be 1. Okay. And for this 13 divided by 14, your proportion will be 0.93. And for this 14 divided by 14, 1. 14 divided by 14, 1. So these are the proportions. Same way for the lower group, you will be calculating the proportion. Okay. So 14 divided by 14, 1. So it means 14 students out of 14 groups answered it correctly. So your proportion is 1. Whereas if it is 11 students answered it correctly out of 14, then your proportion will be 0.79. Okay. And 7 students answered it correctly out of 14, then proportion will become 0.5. Right? Like this, you will be preparing your sheet. Okay. Now, once you have calculated the proportion for each and every item, then you will be computing the difficulty. Okay, I'm getting a question, ma'am. It will be a very time consuming. You know, Excel sheet is very useful for this. You can calculate it in one go. Use the Excel sheet when you are doing this item analysis. Okay, it will be very easy for you to do it. Okay, now step 6 is compute the difficulty index. Okay, now what is the formula of difficulty index? Difficulty index formula is proportion of students who answered the question correctly plus portion of students who answered the question correctly in the lower group. So in the upper group, what is the proportion of students who answered it correctly plus proportion of students in the lower group who have answered it correctly divided by 2. It will give you the difficulty index. So if proportion is 1 for upper group and 1 for lower group, you will divide it by 2. You will get the difficulty index 1. Okay, so this is the way you will be calculating the difficulty index. Now let us see our sheet. Okay, you got it that PU is proportion of upper 27% who got the item correctly, and PL is proportion of lower 27% who got the item correctly. Okay, so with that you will be getting the difficulty index PU plus PL divided by 2. So I hope you remember that what is the difficulty index? It is percentage or proportion of students taking the test who answered the items correctly. Overall difficulty index is this. Larger the proportion or percentage getting the item right, the easier the item. The higher the difficulty index, easier the item is. Okay? It means if difficulty index is on upper side, is on higher side, then the item will be easy. Okay? Now let's compute the difficulty index for our tally sheet which we prepared. Okay. Now difficulty index PU plus PL by 2. You remember. Now for the upper group, I have calculated 14 students. Like upper group, it is 14. Proportion is 1. For lower group also 14 have answered. So proportion is 1. And what is the degree of difficulty index? Difficulty index here is 1 because you will get 1 plus 1 divided by 2. 1. Now, can you calculate for 0.93, 0.79 and calculate the difficulty index? Please write in the chat box. Calculate the difficulty index for the second, third and fourth item. Write in the chat box. You have to add up this proportion and this proportion divided by 2. You will get the difficulty index. Okay, calculate it for all. Second, third, and fourth. Okay. I'm getting answers in chat. Okay. Others also, please, everyone. Few of you are answering. Good. Okay. Let us see whether you got these answers. So like this, you will be calculating the difficulty index, where you will be adding up the proportion of students in upper group who answered the item correctly, plus proportion of students in the lower group who answered the question correctly, divided by 2. And you will be getting the difficulty index. Okay. So like this, you will be calculating the difficulty index. Okay. Once you have calculated the difficulty index, now you should know how to interpret it. Okay. Now interpretation is, if I told you that higher the difficulty index, easier the item is. So if the difficulty index is between 0.91 and above, okay, then it is a very easy item. And if it is between 0.76 to 0.90, it means this is easy. Not very easy, but easy. And if it is between 0.26 to 0.75, then it means this is average item or moderately easy. But if your difficulty index is on lower side, okay, it means less than 0.25, it means these are the difficult questions. Okay, only few students were able to answer it correctly. So if it is between 0.11 to 0.25, it is difficult. But if it is below 0.10, then it is very difficult. Okay, so like this, you will get to know about each and every item, whether it is very easy, moderately easy, or difficult, or very difficult, based upon the calculation you have done for the difficulty index, right? Now let us see for our tally sheet, the first item. Now, because all in the upper group and lower group had answered it correctly, and difficulty index is 1. So it is very easy, because this is 0.91 and above, right? It is very easy. For the second item, your difficulty index is 0.86. So it is between 0.76 to 0.90. So this is easy. And for the third item, it is 0.90. 0.90 means easy. And another one is, for the fourth one, it is 0.75. If it is 0.75, then it is moderately easy or average, right? Okay. So like this, you will get to know about the difficulty level of each and every item of your questionnaire. Now, difficulty index, when the question may come in your mind that whether we should add the difficult items in our assessment questionnaire, or there should be easy items, or there should be moderately difficult. Now, see, there are two things. One thing is, you have to think about all the students, because you have mix of students. Some of students might be really good students, and some of them might be average students. Some of them might be the bottom students. Okay, so all the students may not be the best performing students. So from their point of view, you may have a mix of difficulty. Some difficult questions, some average questions, and some easy questions. Okay, and but for entrance test or the higher level of concepts, maybe particularly if you're talking about higher level of concept, for example, if there is a PhD entrance test, there we want that each and every person should have the higher level of learning, so we should be able to assess accordingly. So there you can think of adding the questions which are not very easy. You may have very less percentage of easy questions, but good percentage of average and difficult items. Okay, so you can decide based upon your content that whether you have to have the mix of difficulty, or you have to have some higher level of or difficult concepts. If there are difficult concepts you are assessing, then their difficulty level might be little higher also. So for teacher made assessment, a mix of difficulty should be there. Okay, you may have few difficult items. A few difficult items means few, okay, small number, and some difficult, some average, some easy, and a very and a few very easy items. I had to think about those questions and then I had to answer. Okay, so you may have the mix of the difficulties. Okay, however, the difficulty level must be consistent with the degree of difficulty of concepts being assessed. So this is very, very important that you should know that what type of concepts you are trying to assess. Are these higher level concepts or difficult concepts which you are assessing? Then definitely you may have some difficult items, some average items, but then you may not go for the very easy items. Okay, these should not be recall or understanding type of items. These should be little higher level of items. Okay, so your difficulty level should be consistent. But if the topic is very easy, the content area is very easy, then you may go for average, easy, and some very easy items also. Like for the smaller classes in the school level, you may see that the questions are mostly very these are average, easy, and very easy items. Okay, but for the higher levels, these might be difficult, some average, and some easy items, right? Okay, till now for the difficulty index, anybody is having any question, you can ask, then we will move forward to the discrimination index. Any question? Okay, if there is no question, then let us move forward. Okay, next step is you have to compute the discrimination index. Now, discrimination index, I hope you all know, you remember discrimination index is that how much this item is able to differentiate between the high performing students and low performing students. So it means the students who really know the content well, that question should be able to differentiate from the students who do not know the answers. Okay, so how do we calculate the discrimination index? It is calculated by just subtracting the proportion of students in the upper group who have answered it correctly minus proportion of students in the lower group who have answered the item correctly. Okay, so PU minus PL. So for example, discrimination index, if PU is 1 and PL is 1, then it will be 0. So where PU is proportion of upper 27% who got the item correct, and PL is proportion of lower 27% who got the item correct. So discrimination index, just now I told you that this is this helps us to determine the extent to which a test item or a set of items can differentiate between high performing and low performing students. It measures how well an item can discriminate between students who have mastered the content and those who have not. And discrimination index is expressed as a value ranging from -1 to 1. So it may come negative also. Okay. 1 indicate that all high performing students answered the item correctly. 1 means all the high performing students have answered the item correctly. And all the high performing and low performing students have answered it differently, means high performance has answered it correctly and low performance students have answered it incorrectly. Okay, so then it will be 1, right? Now let us see how to calculate it or how to compute it. So discrimination index, like this you will be calculating. So if you have proportion for the first question, if you have 14 students who have answered the question correctly, out of 14, proportion was 1. So for the upper group, proportion is 1. For the lower group also proportion is 1. What will be the discrimination index? Please calculate for all these 4. Yes. Very good. So for first one, it is 0, right? Right. For second, third, fourth also, please calculate. Okay. Good, good. Now you are calculating very fast. Good. Right. Okay, let us see the discrimination index. So this is for first item 1 minus 1, 0. For second item 0.93 minus 0.79, 0.14. For the third item 1 minus 0.79, 0.21. For the fourth item 1 minus 0.5 is equal to 0.5. Now you have got the values. Now what does it mean? How to interpret the discrimination index? So if your discrimination index is 0.41 and above, it means your question is having high discrimination index. It means it is able to discriminate between the upper group or the high performing group from the low performing group. Okay. And if it is between 0.20 to 0.40, then it is having moderate discrimination power. And if it is less than 0.19 and below, it means it is having the low discrimination power, right? So this is the interpretation. Now for our items, the first item, this discrimination index is 0, which is less than 0.19. So it means this discrimination index is very low because all the students in upper group has also answered it correctly and all the students in lower group have also answered it correctly. So it is having very low discrimination power. And for the second question, it is 0.14, which is less than 0.19, very low discrimination power. And for the third question, it is 0.21, it is moderate. It means it is having moderate discrimination power. And for the fourth question, it is 0.5, it is having very high power of discrimination. Okay. Now we have calculated the difficulty index. We have calculated the discrimination index. Okay. Yes, I told you that it may have the negative minus value also. So if you have negative discrimination, it means that more students in lower group answered an item correct than in the upper group. So it means if it is coming in minus, then it means in the lower group, more students have answered it correctly than the upper group. Then there might be so many reasons for that. What can be the reasons for negative discrimination index? You may have some mistake in the scoring key. Okay, sometimes that may happen when we are making our key. Sometimes we may do some mistakes. Okay. Second thing is poorly prepared students are able to guess the answer. It means your item is prepared in a way that even poorly prepared students are able to guess the answer. Or well-prepared students are somehow justifying or misled by wrong answers. So I talked to you about the distractor, that they can be sometimes misleading distractors. If these are misleading distractors, sometimes the students who have prepared well, they are using their brain, they may think that this distractor is a better answer than the right answer. So it means there is some problem with our distractor. Okay, so these can be the reasons that this negative discrimination index can come. So what can happen? There might be very easy or very difficult questions which are not good discriminators. Sometimes very easy and very difficult questions may not be the good discriminators, because if these are very easy, then all the students in upper group may also answer it correctly. And all the lower group students may also answer it correctly. But if it is very, very difficult, then what will happen? Even high performing students may not be able to answer it correctly. And if in the same way, low performing students will not answer it correctly. Then whether these types of the questions are good discriminators? No, these types of the questions are not good discriminators. And so we should not go for very easy and very difficult questions. Okay. And sometimes a poorly written item will have little ability to discriminate. And sometimes if our item is not written well, or it is ambiguous, confusing item, then it is also having little ability to discriminate, because everybody will be confused. Even high performing students will be confused and they will not be able to answer it correctly, right? Okay, now you have calculated the difficulty index, you have calculated the discrimination index. Now is the time when you have to make the informed decisions. Informed decisions means based upon the calculations of your item analysis, Now you know that which items are difficult, very easy, or average, and which items are having very high discrimination power, average discrimination power, or low discrimination power. So based upon those computations, now you can take the decision that whether particular item has to be retained, or it has to be revised, or it has to be rejected, right? Now, how to take that decision? Now you need to take the decision based upon these indexes. So if your difficulty index is moderate to average for a particular item, if it is moderate to average, it means it is between 0.26 to 0.70. And at the same time, this item's discrimination index is high or average, okay? It means it is above 0.41 or between 0.20 to 0.40. It means this item is very good item from the difficulty point of view and from the discrimination power point of view. So average, and discrimination index is very low or low, you may say. If discrimination power is low, but its difficulty index is average, then what can you do? You can just revise the question, okay? It means difficulty is okay, but it is not able to discriminate. So then you have to revise it. Maybe you may have to revise the item, or you may have to revise the distractors. You may have to go through that question properly, okay? Go through it properly, that whether my item is rightly written or my distractors are right, good distractors. And then based upon that, you will get an idea about your distractor. You will get the distractor information and you can take the decision to revise. At the same time, if your difficulty index is very easy, difficult, or very difficult, okay? But discrimination index is high and average. It means discrimination power is good, but difficulty index is either it is very easy or it is difficult. Then also you may go for revision. Or sometimes you may take the decision that whether you need to retain it or not. You may take expert advice also, but ideally if it is very easy and very difficult and high discrimination index, then you should always go for revise. But if it is easy, difficult, and high discrimination, high to average discrimination index, you can take the decision whether to retain or revise, okay? Now, coming to difficulty index, if it is very easy, difficult, or very difficult, but discrimination index is low, it means discrimination power is very low. It is not able to discriminate. And at the same time, difficulty index is also either it is very easy, difficult, or very difficult. It is not average difficulty. Then it is better to reject those particular items. It is better to reject, because then this type of questionnaire is not a good assessment of your students, okay? Because some students may find it very difficult and they may not be able to answer. So you will not be able to know that which areas, whether this question is having the problem, or your teaching methodology was the problem, or your delivery of the content was the problem. It means the question is not a good question. It is better to reject such question, okay? And moreover, it is not able to discriminate also high performing students from the low performing students. So then it is better to reject and remove that particular item, right? So these are the decisions, informed decisions, which you can take based upon the item analysis. Now, there are some points to note. I think this already we have told that items with difficulty index within 0.26 to 0.75 means this is average type of the difficulty index with discrimination index, which is high discrimination index, can be retained. And items, this also we have already gone through. Okay, now decide, you have got to know that this is the method through which I can either I can take the decision to retain, revise, or reject the item. So for our items, for which we have calculated the difficulty index and discrimination index, we can go for our decision. Now you see your verdict for the difficulty index for the first question is very easy. and for the discrimination index, it is low. Now, what will be your decision? Please write in the chat box. For the first question, what will be your decision? Please write in the chat box for the first question if difficulty index is very easy and this discrimination power is very low, then what will be your decision? Very good. All of you are writing reject. Good. And for the second, the difficulty index is easy and discrimination is low. What will be your decision? Revise. Are you sure, Priyanka? You will be revising? Yes, you will be rejecting because here your difficulty index is also easy and your discrimination power is very low. So better to reject. Now, third question, your difficulty index is very easy, but your discrimination index is moderate. Yes, for third question, revise. Very good. Very good. And for fourth question, difficulty index is average, discrimination index is high. What will be your decision? Very good. Retain. So you will be retaining this fourth item. Accept, retain. Very good. Very good. Okay. Yes, you have given the right answers. So the first question you will be rejecting, second question you will be rejecting, third question you can revise, and fourth question you can retain, right? Okay. So these are the next items 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, for fifth item, I just want the answers. First of all, proportion for the upper group, proportion for the lower group. Then please calculate the difficulty index. I'll give you 30 seconds, okay? So only for fifth, do it. For each and everything, I need difficulty index, I need discriminatory index, I need your verdict also and your decision, final decision, your informed decision based upon it. I'm giving you the 30 seconds. Screen is visible? Can anybody confirm whether screen is visible? Because somebody is writing in the chat that screen is not visible.
It's visible.
Thank you. Priyanka, please check your connection. Okay, so I have started getting the answers. I would like to give little more time to others. Others also please answer. I have asked only for one item. I want answers from some more participants. Okay, so what is the proportion here for the upper group? It is 1 because 14 out of 14 have answered in the upper group, and for the lower group 14 out of 14 have answered, so proportion is 1. So what was the difficulty index? Difficulty index is PU plus PL divided by 2, means 1 plus 1 divided by 2. So your difficulty index will be 1. Okay, so what is your verdict? It is a very easy equation. And discrimination index, PU minus PL. Okay, so 1 minus 1, 0. So it means this is discrimination power is very low. So now your difficulty index is very easy. Discrimination index is low. So your decision should be to reject the item. Okay, so like this, you can calculate, you can just click the pick and you can calculate in your free time so that you can get an idea that for the actual questionnaire, how you will be able to do it, right? So in this way, you have to prepare a tally sheet, which will help you in making the informed decisions in the end, right? Okay. Now, a few more points to note. Difficulty levels should never be negative. If you get any value in the negative, then it means there is some problem in calculation. So please recalculate it. Whereas discrimination levels can be, discrimination power can be negative, but difficulty can never be in the negative. Okay. Item discrimination can be negative. And I told you that negative discrimination happens when more students in lower group answer an item correct than in the upper group. And the general advice is to reject, revise, or rewrite the item entirely with negative item discrimination. So if it is a negative item discrimination, then you can go through the item. There might be some problem with the item. So maybe you may think of rejecting, or you may revise or totally rewrite it. Okay, if you are getting the negative item discrimination. Okay, I talked about the item test correlation also. Okay. Item test correlation is, I told you earlier also that item test correlation is that how the individual item is correlating with the overall test score. Okay, that also we can calculate. And this is a type of a correlation coefficient which gives us the information about the relationship between the individual item and the total score. It tells us that whether the strength is good, what is the direction, whether it is a negative relationship or positive relationship. That information we get. Ideally, this should be related with the total item scores. And item score, as the correlation coefficient, it ranges between -1 to +1, with values closer to 1 indicate a stronger positive relationship. Whereas if it is closer to -1, it indicates the strong negative relationship. Okay. And a correlation of 0 indicates no relationship between item and the total test scores. Okay, so test item correlation can also be calculated, which tells you that whether this total item is overall relating to the overall scores or not. If it is not at all relating, ideally it should be more than 0.7. If it is less than that, it means the correlation is less. Okay. A high positive correlation coefficient indicates that the item is measuring the same construct as the overall test and is contributing to the overall reliability of the test. So for example, if I am taking the test on maybe sampling techniques in research, then my question all should be from sampling. Okay. Then if my question is from the sampling technique only, it should have a positive relationship between my total item score. So if person knows about one item, then he should have the idea about overall the sampling technique. So item test total correlation should be positive. Okay. On the other hand, low or negative correlation suggests that item is not measuring the same construct as the overall test and may need to be revised or removed from the test. So if there is low correlation or negative correlation, then we may have to revise it or you may remove it from the test. Okay. By analyzing the item total correlation for each item on a test developers and educators can identify which items are contributing most to the overall reliability and validity of the test and which item may need to be improved. So through that, we get to know that which items are really helping us to measure the concept which we want, and whereas the other items which are having the negative correlation or low correlation, that may have to be revised or improved. Okay, so that's all about the item analysis. If you have any question, please ask. If you have any question, so today we have discussed about what is item analysis, what are the purposes of item analysis. We have talked about the important concepts of the item analysis, that is difficulty index, discrimination index, and then we have calculated the difficulty index and discrimination index for each and every item. And then in the end, I have just talked to you about the item total correlation. So any question, if you have, you're most welcome to ask the question. In the chat box, you can write or you may ask. You can unmute and ask. Okay, so I think I have completed before time. If anyone is not having any question, I think there are some questions in the chat. Okay, no, there is no question. How to assess creating level with MCQ? Actually, we are not assessing, but when you are preparing the questions, that time you need to be very clear that which level you want to assess. Okay. Ideally, whenever we are preparing the question, we should map it. Nowadays, you might have heard about the outcome-based education. In outcome-based education, we map each and every question with our learning objective. You can say CO, that is course objective, and plus how it is mapped with the Bloom's taxonomy. So for each and every item, when you are preparing the item, at the time you need to think about that I have to add the questions from the higher level Bloom taxonomy, and then at the same time you can keep on writing. You may have a tally sheet with you, and in that tally sheet you may keep on writing that this first question is mapped to my this course outcome and is mapped to this Bloom's taxonomy level. Okay. So this cannot be done in the end, but it should be done in the starting only when you are writing. Okay. So you don't have to assess, but when you are preparing, you have to take care that please take care of all the levels of the Bloom's taxonomy. Mostly the lower levels of the Bloom's taxonomy their difficulty index might be very low. These might be very easy or easy questions. But as you go to the higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy, your difficulty index and discrimination index will become better. Okay, right? So this was the question in the chat box. I hope I am able to answer. Pritha has asked the question. But it is a very good question. Okay, thank you, Pritha. Anyone else is having any question, you can ask. Dr. Rakhi, I'm not able to hear you. You're saying something. Is there any problem with my computer. Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm not able to hear you, Dr. Rakhi.
Sorry, ma'am, I think there was some problem with the mic.
Okay, no problem. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. You have wonderfully explained the item analysis, how to calculate the discriminating difficulty index, and how to decide whether to reject or whether to accept that questions. So thank you. It was a organized and well presented topic. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation and for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Rakhi. And again, I would like to thank Dr. Smriti for giving me this opportunity. Because this topic is really close to my heart. And I was given a very apt topic. So thank you so much, Dr. Smriti.
Thank you so much for sparing your valuable time with us, and hope we will have many more collaborations together. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Feedback. Participants, before leaving, just give the feedback. We will share the link in the chat box and in the WhatsApp group. And also we have a message in WhatsApp group regarding one homework, that assignment. You have to submit it before, like on 15th, by 15th. 15th is the last date.
बंद नहीं करना वीडियो बंद करो